Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name's Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right, here we go, Josh. A couple weeks late, but here we are.
Man, travel and such. But no,
life.
Life. The cool part is I got to see this movie twice. I saw it on opening night, and I just saw it again last night. So
that's cool. How was that experience? How was it experiencing it for the first time? Then some time goes by, and then you see it again.
Well, so I mean, I do that sometimes when we have like a protracted amount of time between our recording, like when it comes out on our recording. But I was glad that I got to see it on opening night because there are some things that we'll get into going into the movie that I was surprised about, and I don't get surprised about movies very often. Like we just talked about Deadpool and Wolverine, and like I pretty much knew all the stuff that was gonna be in that as far as like cameos or whatever. You know, it's like it's kind of part of the culture. If you like watch a trailer essentially, but they've Fede Alvarez and everybody associated with Alien Romulus really guarded certain things associated with this movie and kept them until right at the end or until release. And I'm sure that like after release it was, you know, the cat's out of the bag and you can talk about it however you want and it's online and whatever. But I wasn't a part of I was in that first group of people who got to experience it for good or bad, got to experience certain things, certain choices, certain characters. And so that was cool. And I haven't had that in a while, but I'm glad I got to see it a second time, because I always find new things the second time. Sometimes I actually find more, for me, I find more story elements the second time. And I'm guessing you probably find more like Easter eggy type things. Whereas I notice the Easter eggy things a lot of times right off the bat, like Reebok shoes, for example. I saw those the first time I watched the movie, but you know, that might be something where it's like, oh, well, yeah, that's an interesting addition, you know, that kind of a thing. But so what about you? You just watched the last night. Were you able to like stay away from some of the spoil? No, I didn't think so.
No, I found out who Andy was immediately, but then you find out who he is immediately in the film. So it's like,
Yes.
okay, good. And there's some nice twists and turns with his character. So that's good. They play on it's sort of, they play both sides of that type of character, which I thought was interesting. And I would say that I find watching something a second or third time, especially in the theater, depending on what it is, it either confirms something that I was thinking I saw or thinking I felt versus, I didn't see that the first time, I didn't see that the second time. It confirms things more than it. I mean, there are things that show up that I was like, I don't think I noticed that the first time, but I'm pretty good at taking things in very quickly the first time. Now, registering it all and making it all make sense is not necessarily the best. I'm not the best at that. And sometimes I think that's the fault of the film. And then I'm pretty honest about going, wait, no, I don't remember if you remember when we talked about Guardians of the Galaxy
3. Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
And I was like, what happened?
Why is he there? Why is he flying? Yeah. No.
And then I watched it again. I was like, I don't know what that was. Some kind of film aneurysm or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so it's more of a confirmation. Oh, okay. Yes, did that happen? Yes, that happened. Oh, okay. So maybe I took that the wrong way, but I know that because this is going to happen and that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I'll watch the setup more the second time. But the second time for me is more of a detail with costumes and design and production, because you're taking in the narrative the first time, you're taking in the character development the first time, you're trying to figure out the puzzle pieces about where the story is going. Little Red Riding Hood, she gets the hood, that. The second time I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, they have little stitching on the hood, or, oh, there's a gold thing that's supposed to represent this, whatever it may be. So I'm interested in seeing this a second time. I thoroughly enjoyed it the first time. I do have some questions, and a lot of my questions happen in the last 10 minutes of the movie. I'm going to put that up front.
Okay.
But overall, I think it's a worthy installment.
Yeah.
I think they need to start calling it like they say, Star Wars stories. It's now an alien story, but this one,
This one's
and
tied in though. I like
right.
it that it's tied in
But I
very
had to
tightly.
look that up though, because I was confused. I was like,
Well,
where does this fit? And then I saw the chronological order of all the films, starting with the Predator alien films all the way through.
Well, and one
And
of the things I noticed was that, like, in the very beginning, I didn't notice it the first time, but the second time, the first shot is a ship coming through into the detritus of a broken up ship, and I didn't see it the first time, but the second time, you can clearly see that it says Nostromo on a portion of the ship, and I was like, okay, so this is the tie-in.
it's
I was looking at the other ship,
okay.
not at the stuff in the foreground. I was
Sorry, I
looking in
didn't
the
mean to be
background.
like, well, I noticed it.
Well, that's
It's
fine,
just a
and
slow shot.
I'm sure that Fede Alvarez and all the people that actually created that shot, all the visual effects people, were like, "This is pretty big, right? Are we good?" And they were probably like, "Yes, we're good. Nobody's gonna mix this." Well, I missed it the first time, but
Because you're looking somewhere else.
yeah, but
But
the second time I clocked that and I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. But the things that I noticed the second time a lot were the foreshadowing. There's so much. See, this is where, like, I think that so have you seen Don't Breathe? Have you seen those movies?
no, I
So
don't think
it's
so.
like it's got Stephen Lang from he was the kind of
Yes,
like
you're blind.
heavy in
Yeah, I know who he is.
why am I blanking? It's the biggest movie of all time, Avatar.
Avatar.
Okay.
I saw Stephen Lang in an original production of A Few Good Men in Charlottesville before they took it to Broadway.
And he was Nathan Jessup?
Yes,
Dang, of course he was.
he was
And I
great.
bet he killed it.
He and you stop breathing for the 2 hours he's on the stage. He's literally a powerhouse on stage. But I had already known him because he did, if I'm not mistaken, he was the other brother in Death of a Salesman with John Malkovich and Dustin Hoffman.
Oh,
The television
Oh,
play that they did.
okay.
I believe, if I'm not wrong, he is the other brother.
Wow, that's cool. So anyway, he plays an old man who is blind, and he has money in his house. It's in like Detroit or whatever, like this just like dilapidated neighborhood, and he's still there. And so this group of like I think it's like three, younger people like try to break in, and it's a whole thing. It's a horror movie, but it's got this like conceit to it. And I was like, yeah, that's it's what kind of hooked me in. And once I saw that Fede Alvarez was doing this movie, I was like, okay, it's gonna be in good hands, and it's gonna be kind of moving back more towards the Ridley Scott, the 1979 Ridley Scott Alien stuff versus the James Cameron. Although there are allusions to Aliens, there are allusions to other movies. Even Alien 3, like the fanfare, the 20th Century Fox fanfare at the beginning, where it kind of like holds on that unresolved note, and it just kind of all like goes into this green goo. Yeah, that was like, oh, that's a cool little homage to Alien 3. But so that's the stuff that I kind of saw was the foreshadowing to those things. And someone like Fede Alvarez, who I think does have a good handle on filmmaking, I could expect that from him, but I think on my first viewing I was not expecting that. And so after seeing it a second time, it's like, of course he's going to have allusions to other movies, but then he's also going to have these kind of like breadcrumbs he's going to place that he'll pick up later on in the film. And so that's the part that is just like, because I've seen other movies even recently that are just like not good. They're just not good movies, and they're not meant to be like really dug into. Steph and I just watched The Union with Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry, and it's not a good movie. It's a flat, sterile, emotionless, pointless movie. That's what it is. And it has people firing guns, and it's got things going on, and J.K. Simmons has a big beard. So, that's what it is. I didn't expect any kind of like foreshadowing in that movie, and I didn't really get any. Whereas I probably should have expected that in this type of a movie. So, but I kind of went in with very low expectations, and I came out definitely, it was way past anything that I had expected. So I was happily surprised and excited to see it again. So, I mean, what was your kind of overall feel of the movie? Do you feel like it was necessary? And
I knew you were going to ask me.
and then the next question is, even if it wasn't necessary, do you feel like if they had to make an Alien movie, this was the good one? This was a good one to make.
Interesting. Necessary? Maybe not.
Yeah.
After the second film, Aliens, is any of it necessary? And after Alien Resurrection, you could pretty much say anything was necessary after that one.
Well, yeah, to
It's
recover.
it's not. Just the choices in that one, I don't understand those choices. Do you remember in that one where the aliens, they talk to each other, and they decide to kill the one to let
I don't
the
remember.
acid.
I try to
Okay.
save my Jean-Pierre Jeunet love for like Delicatessen and I mean like the good movies, Amelie,
Yeah,
that kind
which
of
is
stuff.
great. Long Engagement is
Long
that the same one?
Engagement, yeah.
Yeah, which is great. Yeah, I think he got stuck in the script and got stuck in the idea, and they tried new stuff, and it just does not work. There are things that are worth seeing in that film. Ron Perlman, Winona Ryder, some things Sigourney Weaver does, some things she doesn't do.
But they put her in bad situations. They put
They did.
Sigourney Weaver in bad situations.
They
in
did.
that
They
movie.
did. And they made weird choices with the fingernails. And I get what they were going for, but you either go all the way or you don't at all.
Yeah.
And that will actually end up in my last 10-minute conversation of this film. So is it necessary? Sure. Because why not an Alien movie? Why not? I mean,
Well-
we already had Alien Predator. We already had all of the prequels. And this is kind of a sequel prequel.
Yeah.
Because it fits in between 1 and 2. So
But technically,
then-
it is necessary because, from a business standpoint, they have to utilize this intellectual property.
Right.
That Disney has to utilize it because they bought Fox, and they're doing it with everything else that Fox owns. I mean, they're obviously doing it with Deadpool, but they're doing it with other Fox entities, and they have to churn that out.
Right. But that's a different question.
Yeah.
Is it a necessity for this corporation? Absolutely
Yes.
it is. Is it a necessity to keep this legend, narrative, story going? Maybe not. But it is worthy to fit into the canon. And I think overall, the things that I loved about it are also semi things that I questioned. So, example, the cinematography looks just like the first film,
Yep.
first and second film. The whole idea, there's a lot of visual tropes. The whole spinning of white lights and yellow lights on
Yep.
forklift type things, the whole structures of everything, obviously. But
Production design is exactly the same as
Yeah.
1979's
and
Alien.
if they went to a planet in the 1979 Alien, it would look like the planet that they come off of this one. I mean, the colony, if you will.
Sure.
They all look similar, all the way down to the blue laser light mist thing that you see closer
Yeah.
to the end. So there's little visual tropes throughout it. In a way, I was happy about that, and in a way, I felt okay. That it's a comforting feeling. You
Was it
know
too
this world.
nostalgic? Like, was
No,
it-
not at all.
Okay.
Because I am all about.
See, me too. And people
I'm all about Christmas and stockings going the same place and candy canes going the same place. Although it's different every year for me.
Yeah.
But I'm never one to look down on remember this and honor the remembrance of that moment, the nostalgia of it. I'm not too cool for school when it comes to honoring something like
But
that.
people have complained that it was too not derivative, but too like navel gazy. Like, oh, remember that part? Like, you know,
Yes.
kind of like the
I get
Chris
that.
Farley. Like, oh, hey, Martin Scorsese, remember when you made Goodfellas? Isn't that
Yeah.
so cool? Like, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, well, I mean, but for me, like, it's the things that they pick. It's like we're all in a club. We're all in a club of people who've seen Alien and Aliens. Like, that's the club we're in. So
Right.
if we're in the club, like, wouldn't you talk about the things that are relative to the club that you're in?
Sure.
Yes, you would.
That's
Fede
a good way to
Alvarez
put it.
is an Alien fan. He's an Aliens fan. He's an Alien franchise fan. Wouldn't he want to talk to and show us and be those things? You know, and if he has the might of Disney and Fox Century, whatever they're called now, behind him, Yes, do it. And I didn't think that I think it was a new story that wasn't specifically the same as all the other stories. That's good. But it also was in the same world. So I don't have any problems with it.
There does come a point where it does teeter into don't use that line. And they use the
That
line.
line. Nope, that's wrong. No, that was too much.
Too far over into it.
Yep.
But the fact that you see the artificial intelligence or the whatever you want to call it, the
like mother?
What?
Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
the Andy.
Oh, yeah, the android.
Android. I'm like politically correct when it comes to what do we call them because they
Really?
bring that up in
Well,
no, not really, but I mean, I like to respect all creatures, and I believe that I would be a person who would respect that if that was in our. I say thank you to Alexis or Alexa. Yeah, I do. I don't think that's a bad thing. Anyway, when you see him bleeding, I know that's all right. When you see him bleeding and you see the white and she calls it blood, you're bleeding.
Yeah.
And then you see the little gap where they can put a new. I was like, that's a bad idea when they decided to take that one from
the science,
androids. Yeah, I was like, you guys, have you not seen any of the other movies, people? So I knew but that was a neat take on it. And also the whole idea of him going like that and his eyes rolling back in his head and you seeing Wayland.
The serial number.
That is an original take on something we already know. Some of the visuals, I don't think you can get away from it because why would you? The atmosphere of the aliens crawling on the walls and the opening or the from the 1979 version when they look up into the rafters and they see the one crawling and then in the James Cameron one when you see all of them crawling, it's become a creeped out moment that we need in these films. So I think it's a necessity. I do believe that Alvarez is his last name, right? Yep. Feta? What is his first name? Fede Alvarez. I believe he could have, and I believe he has another screenwriter with him. They could have found maybe a little bit more of an original way of twisting those things, but the way they chose to put them in, I didn't have a problem with it. So I was fine with that.
Yeah. The other writer is Rodo Sayagüez.
Sure.
Sayagüez.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, we haven't talked about the cast yet. We have Kaylee Spaney playing Rain, the main character, who we just saw and talked about in Civil War. And David Johnson, I think he's in industry. I've seen multiple people from that show have now like gone into movies that I haven't even seen.
The HBO show?
Yeah.
With Jon Snow?
Jon Snow.
Yeah.
Industry is a HBO show, but it's got who does it got in it? It's got Myha'la, who's been in. I saw her in Black Mirror. I remember seeing her. I just saw her in Bodies, Bodies, Bodies too. She was in Leave the World Behind, which we talked about. She was the daughter. She was Mahershala Ali's daughter in Leave the World Behind.
She's great.
Yeah, she is really good.
I just watched that.
So she's in that show also, and then so there's a couple other people I think that are kind of starting to bubble up too. But
keep reading the cast.
Oh, Kit Harington is in it. Okay.
Yeah, Jon Snow.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. See, well, that tells you. I mean, I haven't seen any of those episodes. So we got
Game of Thrones
too. Of course. Yes, I saw 3 episodes. I'm steeped in Game of Thrones lore.
We're not recording my opinion about Game of Thrones. I'll get blasted out of the world. I'll be deleted through vision from the internet, just like Ultron was.
They're gonna come after you.
Yeah, they will. My brother will be leading the pack.
Oh, jeez.
Yes. So the cast is incredible.
Yeah,
it's small. And then 3 die almost immediately, if you will. You get to know them. You get to know things about them.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait, there's not enough people for people to have died already. But
this is
what happened in the first one.
And it's a good horror movie. Actually, the first one did have a much better way of establishing character with that round table Like they have their little discussion, but really their little discussion is an exposition as to why they even need to go up there to this space station. So that doesn't do what the round table breakfast does in Alien. Like that, we actually start to like connect dots for different characters in Alien, whereas this one, they don't have enough time because they've got way more action. Actually, they do have more action scenes, way more action scenes in this movie than they do have in Alien. Because Alien's more about like atmosphere and oppressiveness than this movie is. This movie's more like, here's the first kill, here's the next kill, here's the next kill, which is fine. That's what a horror movie is, and it's what horror movie should be. And when I wrote down, I just like in my little notes, I wrote down like the different characters, and then I just had kills. And I had like Navarro, like who's killed first? Navarro, played by Eileen Wu, chestburster. Oh, by the way, spoilers, I guess. So we're into spoilers now.
We're 2 weeks in.
We're into spoilers. So it's like, but even I don't even need to say the character names. So these are the kills: chestburster, acid dripping death, alien baby mouth through the head, eaten by her own baby, and I guess Andy's kind of like beaten up and left for dead-ish at the end. But that's some serious. If you had any doubt whether this movie was an action movie or a horror movie, this is a horror movie, like straight up horror.
Well,
movie.
It's interesting that you said that the breakfast round table, if you will, gave us character development. But what this film does, Romulus does, is it gives us character traits through the electric shock thing that the guy gets.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, wow. He lights up in a different way when he realizes he has that instrument. When you realize the woman's pregnant, you're like, I'm pretty sure I know where that's going. And then when you see the injecting thing, you pretty much know where that's going.
Well, but also
and
the pregnant
a good
thing,
way though.
Yeah, the pregnant thing though, usually pregnant means safe. But not in this
I
movie.
knew it. No.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure she's going down for the reason I think she's going down.
Ooh.
But are they going to delicately do it?
Yep.
And they did not. And I was like, okay, you know what? That makes the at stake ridiculous now. Like the idea of how anybody will die after that, you have no idea at that point. And really that's kind of the third act anyway.
Yeah.
And you pretty much know. So, but it's interesting how they integrate all of the tropes from all the other films into it with the airlock and getting sucked through it and how they're going to deal with that. And that doesn't really happen. And then there's a bunch of face huggers. First question. Did we establish in the history of Alien that heat and sound attracts them, or is that new for
not
this?
that I've seen?
Okay. I thought that was a little convenient, but I thought maybe heat or maybe sound, but both of them.
We've also never seen that many face huggers at the same time.
That's what I'm saying.
Outside of a controlled environment, like usually they're coming out of an egg.
Yeah.
So and they immediately come out of an egg and go right onto a face or bust through a helmet or something. Like it's the immediate like, and then everybody seems to be like, wait, this person's still alive. Let's take them into the sick bay. It's a very like controlled environment.
Right.
And we don't get to see just face huggers everywhere, which is
right. But as soon as you see the vacuum packs and they start to heat up, you're like, oh, that's okay. We know what those are.
Yep.
We know what they do. We know what they're going to do, but we've never seen them revealed this way, like what you just said.
Yep.
It's usually a timed thing. But this one, as soon as the first one expanded, I was like, oh, this is this. And then the sounds they made as they're moving, all of them moving at the same time.
The clicking, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not so sure the sound is as important in the other films. I'm sure it is, but I don't think I ever really, it's nightmarish in this one. And the way that and the sound design is excellent, because I don't know if you noticed, but when they move over certain things, they sound certain ways, obviously metal, and then when they move over pipes or poles or cloth or whatever, and it stops depending on what and the way that they go,
you know,
up the side of the wall.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
It's ominous. Yeah.
Yes, it's creepy. Well done.
Yeah. So that part, like you're adding, so they're adding that the amount of chest bursters, that element to it. They're also paying homage, like with the acid dripping death, where we kind of saw what the acid does, but I'm not. Has anybody died of like acid dripping on them directly? I can't remember in Alien if they've done that, but it's like. It makes sense though. I mean, we see other people being affected by that. Rook, the Rook character, who is not Ian Holm from Ash, Ian Holm's Ash character, but it's the Rook character in this movie. It looks like was kind of like half of his body was eaten by all that acid, but and then the rest of the stuff we've kind of seen, the alien baby through the mouth thing. That's established.
But wait, we've never seen as soon as they established the gravity issue.
That was cool.
Yes, it was. And then I was like, she is smart. And they are making her as smart as every single female in this franchise.
But she's not Sigourney. She's not Ripley.
No.
Which I liked that.
100% not. 100% not. But yet the smartest person in the room, because she's thinking with her head and heart at the same time, which they kind of establish when they do the kind of bigotry towards the android, when the one character, and she's like, what? He can't go? Yeah, we weren't going to tell you. But when the anti-gravity thing happens and you realize when she looks over and realizes that she can shoot them all, and the blood,
the acid blood,
is going to rotate around in a tunnel of, those tunnels you go through when you're a kid and it rotates and you get wobbly. It's like that, but way worse. I was like, okay, that's a super original way to add this trope into this film. Mm-hmm. Super original. Yep. And then when you realize that the anti-gravity or the gravity has to go back, you're like, how is that going to look? What visual is that going to be? Is it going to be where she goes to grab something and it splatters? And they use it in a very unique way. And I was like, okay, they have continuously upped the stakes throughout this whole entire film. You start here. Yeah. And really, you start normally here, but you start here in this film. Just the whole anxiety of them getting off the planet and connecting to that thing, and just the idea of, 30 minutes to contact or 45 minutes to contact to the rings.
Which is real time. It is real time.
Right. It is for the film?
It is.
See, I love that.
Me too.
But the stakes are already high, because how many planets or how many rings of planets have you ever seen a ship being destroyed by a certain amount of time by being too close to it?
Even seen them up close. I didn't even know what those rings are made of, like, or how that, like, what that looks like, and so they're able to make their representation of that, and just the fact that it's
smart. They're
going at different speeds, which means you're essentially barreling into this like wall,
high-tech sandpaper.
Yeah, it is like sandpaper.
Yeah. And there's that last shot, not to jump too far, when the ship is pulling away and you still see the original ship being destroyed. Yeah. That's really well done. So it's interesting because I wrote down notes this time, and we have gone through them chronologically of my notes without any prior knowledge and without any priar rehearsal.
I didn't even plan on that, but I'm not good as as like a co-host.
Wow. You okay? Pull these out just a little bit. Your head might not fit into them, because you got a couple zingers in tonight.
Well, we are stepping clearly around the whole Ian Holm included in the film.
Second question.
Character. Luckily, they didn't make it Ash, because there would be no reasoning for that. But they made it Rook, I guess, which Bishop is the Lance Hendrickson character, right? So they kind of took that and expanded on the naming. But his Rook character, like, first of all, I listened to an interview with Fede Alvarez. Totally on the up and up. Ian Holm's family is totally fine with it.
I'm sure.
There's not an issue as far as like whatever you want to call that, taking advantage of somebody who passed away 4 years ago. None of that. Everybody's cool with it. Everybody's fine with it. So I'm fine with it as far as that's concerned. But my main issue is that every time he was on screen and he was talking, I could tell that it was really intense digital face replacement. They did use animatronics. When you see him and he's not talking, it is full on real. Like most of the stuff in this movie, when it comes to like the set design, it is real. They're using, real things, real buttons, real switches, real lights.
Practical effects. Yeah.
Everything is practical when it comes to that, the set design. But when it comes to that character and when he talks, the top of his head and the bottom of his head have nothing to do with each other. And it really bugs me.
I love it.
So, yeah, that was the worst part. His voice was fine. He sounded like Ian Holm. That technology's been around for a decade. So that's I didn't expect that to be an issue. But the moment he showed up on screen, I was like, this is not going to go well. And it did.
Why didn't they just use, well, it's interesting because sometimes I'll watch things and now because I've known you for 10 years plus, I think, what would Josh think? Or is that weird to me? I have a side question about effects that I think we've talked about before, but I need to ask you, can I digress for just a split second? Okay. So when you watch Lord of the Rings originally on film in the theater, unless you're all that stuff looks real. Then over time, it seems to become less real. And you can see the computer effects and you can see the outlines. Do those things not age, or what is it that makes it look less real now when I go back to rewatch it? Now, I know when you look at it on your iPad or on your TV or wherever, it's different because on film it looks different. And when it's in 33 feet high or whatever it is, it looks different. And then so when it transposes to the medium that you're watching it on, it can look less real. I understand that. But do you know what I'm talking about? Like do they age?
Well, I think when did Lord of the Rings come out? 03, 01? 01, I think, somewhere around there. So when Lord of the Rings came out, first of all, it was everybody saw it in 35 millimeter projection. They did not see a digital version of that film being projected in a movie screen. So you're going to inherently have film grain associated with the 35 millimeter print. Period. Even if they did, they shot it on film, they did a digital intermediate where they scanned that film of the plates, whatever it was, of New Zealand, the big backgrounds, and then they added in all their 1,000 little computer generated men running around in the background while Legolas slides down the leg of an elephant, that kind of a thing. What?
Okay. It's not a leg, but whatever.
The trunk, whatever it was. I don't know what it was.
Respect, sir.
It's been a while since I've watched Lord
I
of the
know,
Rings.
but you're being a little Josh about that.
But what I'm saying is that all of that still gets printed on 35 millimeter prints, and there's inherent grain associated with those prints. So it's essentially like kind of like putting a layer over those digital graphics that we saw when we were sitting in the theater. And it was also very big, and it was the first time we saw it, and it was all encompassing, and you weren't really analyzing stuff. But once you've seen it for 10, 20 times, whatever, and you're watching it on your iPad and none of that grain is on there anymore, now we're into, you can kind of pick out certain things. And so that's where I think that, previous films it being projected on film, would inherently have, may have been a little bit more forgiving. But there's a sweet spot though, because we talk about Jurassic Park all the time. Jurassic Park, you watch that right now, 4K, no film grain, whatever, on a 4K Blu-ray, it's gonna look great because they worked within a certain bound, and they knew what they could do and they couldn't do. And there were people that were stretching things in the early 2000s and even mid 2000s, and they tried to do a lot, and it looked okay, especially when projected on 35 millimeter film. But nowadays we can kind of poke holes in that. And I think right now what I'm coming to realize is that in individual movies, certain scenes that include CGI are done by totally different post effects houses, like visual effects houses. So certain scenes may look pristine and amazing, and other scenes may look like crap, and they're all in the same movie. So when you say like, oh, the CGI in fill in the blank here movie was bad, I don't even think you can say that anymore. I think you have to really isolate and say like, this part was bad, this part wasn't bad, whatever it was. So
it's not a matter of like aging over time. It's a matter of the way that we can see it over time versus the way that we saw it originally.
We're moving the goalposts. They didn't make it for digital projection in 2024. They made it for 35 millimeter film projection in 2001, whatever.
It was 2001.
Yeah. So that's the kind of, and then also there's, I'm sure, depending on what version you've watched, Peter Jackson's probably tweaked things here and there too. So whatever we saw in 2001 may not even be what's available right now streaming or whatever. I don't even know. But I think that to make something that is timeless, you make something like Star Wars that is untouched. The Star Wars in 1977 that was untouched, that everyone knows you're going into this and there's going to be whatever it is, animatronics, or there's going to be certain things that are not going to look as clean or as perfect as they may look today if they were redone. That's why I think that the Rook character should have been fully animatronic.
Well, let me I'm glad you went back to that, because I was getting ready to go back to that and ask you, why did they not do animatronic computerized mouth?
Well, so
like, why not superimpose something on top of?
I think that's what they did. They started with a physical animatronic head, like with skin and hair and all of it. And then they replaced the face. They probably put little dots on it or whatever. And they had it moving around whenever it was actually talking and saying the lines. But then they replaced that whole face part of the head with CGI. And I was really looking at it this second time that I watched it. I was really trying to key in on it. And I think they got eyes, they got skin, they got all that down. That's done. Nose, even your nose moving around when you're saying words. They got all that. But they don't have the mouth. They just don't have it. And because of that, instead of like trying to shoot for the stars, you kind of like scoot back a little bit and say like, all right, we're not going to be able to make it, photorealistic. Therefore, we're going to go way the other way. And this guy this animatronic thing of an android who doesn't even have a bottom half, maybe we like have a part of his jaw that's like
slur
completely
or something.
broken.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Or that the little voice box that's inside is still working and we can understand him, but the physical motion of the mouth is not realistic. That's fine.
It tricks your mind into believing it's okay, even though you know that it's slurring because the mouth is been eaten off or acid got to or ripped apart. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think I noticed it more than I usually do, and I'm pretty good at suspension of disbelief. I don't have a technical mind like you do, but I do have a creative mind where I can see things the way people intended it to be. This seemed to me, and I don't know, and it's certainly not a criticism because I don't know enough about this world to speak on it, but it almost seems like they got it as good as they could, and they were like, okay, that's the best we can do. And so let's just, nobody's going to question this because we live in this world nowadays. My question is, unless you have something else, my question is, who gets paid for that? Does he have a
his estate? It's his family.
Estate.
Yeah.
So, but is that established already in 2024? Now, there are people who are out there who aren't Ian Holm, who doesn't have an Oscar nomination, who isn't in a Best Picture. He isn't a Hobbit, who's just Jack Smith, and he's happens to be in the first film, so they're going to put him in the 10th film. Does his estate or his company or his person get paid for that?
Yeah, look at Elvis. I mean, it's exactly why.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
Riley
is just
Keough's
like
dealing with Priscilla Presley.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not. I mean, neither one of them are making music but
Right.
they're fighting over the rights to how Elvis Presley's music is used and who gets the money when it is used.
I have an opinion about that, but we're not going to go into
Well,
that.
we're definitely Riley Keough fans, stans, whatever here anyway. So, I mean, I think we may be a little biased, but yeah.
Those are your words, not mine.
Okay.
I can neither confirm nor deny what you just said. That was all Josh, people.
Yeah. I'm also a big fan of Naked Gun, so it's kind of
Try to save it now. Don't try to save it now. We know where you stand. But so does a regular actor get money if they're going to do that? Like, do they get a residual check? Do they get a check? Do they,
if they're going to do what? I don't know what you mean.
If they take your image and your voice from another film and put it into their film, do you automatically, is that like something that you sign away? I'm not saying you know the answer to this. Yeah. I'm saying that is this why everybody, I know why writers had a problem with AI.
Yeah, I think the Actors Guild is dealing with that or has dealt with that. I think that's a part of it. There's a whole likeness thing as a part of.
Because you would think you would because then why use that likeness? And that comes to my ultimate thing about Rook. If he's named something different, and we've had Bishop, and we've had Michael Fassbender, David, and we've had what's Ian Holmes' original name?
It's Ash.
Ash. If we've had all these different types, and now we have Andy's in this, and I guess they gave him a real person's name because of the backstory of this. Yeah, but the person,
the model number starts with ND. It's ND dash whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they call him Andy.
Right. Okay. So we've established that there's a bunch of different characters in this robotic world. So why do we need Ian Holmes's face? Why do we need his? It doesn't make any sense because it would.
Okay, but hold on. I think it's more because he did say, because when Ian Holmes, when Rook is talking with Andy, he's like, dude, it is awesome that I get to meet you because you're like the OG original android and you're modeled after that, and it is so cool. I think it's kind of like a Ford Mustang. Like Andy is like a Ford Mustang, and Ian Holmes Rook is like a Ford Taurus, and then the Ford Taurus is like, hey man, you're so cool, and there's like multiple Ford Tauruses. I owned a Ford Taurus, and my buddy owns a Ford Taurus. We don't have the same car, but they look the same, but they're totally different cars. So I think that's kind of where they're going with that.
There's too many questions in that scenario that the older model, there's too many things that my brain goes into 1,000 different directions and pulls me out of the film and out of a discussion about a film that I liked. I think it was unnecessary because, okay,
what would be more of a distraction? Would it be more of a distraction to have two? So in every other Alien movie, I don't know about that. In every other Alien movie that I can remember, one of the characters is an android.
And we forgot Winona Ryder's character too.
Yes. So one of the characters is an android. They all look different. All right. That's where we're starting. So now in this movie, we've got an android played by David Johnson, who is an android. Now we're adding another android into the scenario. Would it be weirder to have somebody who looks totally different, who nobody's ever seen before in the alien world? Or would it be easier to, or more palatable to have someone who is someone who we've seen before as an android? I don't know.
That's taking. You can answer that question by accepting Andy immediately. You accept Andy immediately
because he's our one android. That's Andy,
right? But there's no need to. There is an ominous. Because of Ash being who Ash is, and because of the things we know Ash did or does in that film.
But see, he did it because the company needed him to do it.
Sure. Just like Andy is doing what he's doing because he now has Ash's or Rook's thing in his brain or his whatever. This is really a silly conversation if you really break it down, but it's also what we do. That said, Okay, when I went to see Quiet Place Day One, I told you I went with my nephews who had never seen any other of the other films. They understood everything. They got all the references. They got, this, that, this, that. So when they see the first two films, they're going to be like, oh, it's going to be a different experience for them, but they're going to see where it all connects. There is nothing in casting Rook from the ashes of Ian Holm. No disrespect, complete respect to that man, and honor his spirit as an actor because I love him.
Yeah.
And he's Polonius for me from the
Well,
Mel Gibson film.
No, he's Mr. Helpman in Brazil for me. Like that's
Oh yeah,
that's
well,
who
yeah.
he will
Okay.
be for me forever.
Yeah,
So,
right. Well, there's just something about him that he's somebody for everybody, for different people. So that said, he does bring that. Ooh,
Oh, I'm sorry. He's Mr. Kurtzman. He's not Mr. Helpman. I'm sorry. I got to get that right.
I wouldn't know the difference of the names
Well,
either,
Kurtz
but I
is
remember
short.
his name.
Yeah,
in
it's
from
Kurtz
the,
means
or I remember
short,
him in
so,
the
yeah.
film.
Anyway, sorry.
But my point is that I see why they did it. I just don't think it was a necessity. And I think this is one of those 10-minute conversations about something that really is not that important per se. I think the technology that they used and the idea that it pulled us out is the main point to it. I'm just not so sure they needed to do that. I think we could have gotten that point across. Audiences are pretty smart. And so they would have known Mother and initially that it was bad immediately, especially if you knew anything from the other films. And if you don't know anything from the other films, as soon as you find out that he has a different directive, that fills in the blanks for everything. So I don't know. I think it's great that we get to see actors doing things that they might not be able to do and that they might be able to do just by doing a voiceover in the future. I'm fine with that. They need to get the technology to match our eyes now, but it didn't strike me as something that was a necessity. Anyway, we should move on.
Well, I've got a more interesting question. What if Sigourney Weaver allowed her likeness to be used in a future Alien movie where a body double plays her and they replace her head, and she doesn't even voice it. They just use synthesized voice from her from previous movies, and she's the star of the movie, even though she didn't actually show up to work at all.
Does it work?
I'm saying, like, would you be
work?
okay?
But that's the
would you be
that's
okay
the quintessential
with that?
question, though.
Yeah.
The question is, sorry to be topping you. The question is not whether it work, whether it should be done, because it's going to be done.
Yeah,
that's where
that's
it's
true.
going to be done. It's being done now, and it's being done to the point where, like, this 10 years ago would have been like, ooh, should we be doing that? Now it's being done. The question is it being done well?
Yeah.
Is it representing her well? Is it believable that it's her? Because isn't that what they did with what's his name from the Rogue One? Isn't that what they did with?
Oh yes, Peter Cushing.
And it didn't work.
You're right. It didn't work. It didn't
did,
work,
and it didn't
enough.
work with her either. With Princess Leia at the end, it didn't work.
It definitely didn't work with Princess
Just
Leia.
shoot her from behind. We get the bun. We know who it is.
Yeah.
But they had to turn her around, and it was like, is this her ghost spirit daughter anime Disney princess?
It just looked like a bunch of goo that kind of moved around her mouth.
It doesn't work. So the question is not, is it ethically, is it morally, is it spiritually correct to do it? Because they're going to do it. Yeah. Now that's an scapegoat statement, but I'm not in charge of any of that stuff. Would I do it as a producer or director or a filmmaker? Probably not, but I'm not in that position, so I have no idea. It needs to be done well then because it's going to happen.
I think that, in thinking about that, like, first of all, I don't know what Sigourney Weaver would think about it or whatever, but either way, like, I think that it may not necessarily be something that would happen in the Alien franchise, but I can pretty much guess that if they ever make another Indiana Jones movie, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. And also, let's talk about Flash with the multiverse of Flash, with the terrible CGI.
It was bad.
They try to justify it like he's going so fast that it looks like that. It's ridiculous. It's terrible. Do not put Adam West into a film as Batman if, one, you can't get his ears to look right, first of all. Second of all, unless you have a purpose and there is a necessity for his character to do that, and it must work. All right, so let's move on.
I mean, I'm pretty. Well, we need to talk about the end because I know you had issues with the end, and to me, I'll just give my little piece on the end. So my piece on the end is classic horror movie where the end, the movie is done, and then it's not done, and then it's done, and then it's not done, and then it's done, and then it's not done.
It's
and
not
finally
any
it's
of
done.
my issue.
Okay,
And
I like
would,
that.
If it was done, I would have been disappointed.
Yeah.
If it was done then not done, I would have been disappointed. If it was done, not done, done, I'm fine with all of that.
Yeah.
That's not my issue. First of all, Ian Holmes' character says xenomorph, not xenomorph. So I'm just saying, he says xenomorph. He does not say xenomorph.
Well, Ian Holmes dead, right?
Yeah, I know that.
So he's wrong.
No, I'm not saying he's wrong.
No,
I'm saying they made him say
They
the
did.
word different than we have ever heard it said before.
That's true.
So that has nothing to do with the conversation that we just did. And yes,
Yeah.
long live Ian Holm. Don't just say he's
No,
dead.
I was
He's
just
dead.
Xenomorph is how I would say it. But,
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because that's how we say xenophobic or
Oh, that's
xeno
true, yeah.
whatever,
Mhm.
right? And I often will say the xenomorph. I often will get those two words and they mean entirely
They
two different
definitely
things.
do.
Although maybe not. So I just thought that was interesting. I was like, is it xenomorph? Is that how we say that? Okay. My issue is not with anything they decided to do. My issue is not with her crawling into the spacesuit, putting the thing on, all kind of, stealing from the original films. An ode to, an homage to. My issue is the design of the offspring. And also the timing. Why are you laughing?
Because they made some bold choices in that offspring.
Okay.
Oh, have you
And
seen the actor? Because I just looked
Right.
at
Okay.
it.
Hold on. Slow down.
Holy
Slow down.
cow.
Slow down. So, okay. Okay. Let me see if I can put this correctly. So the timing of the birth of it and the maturing of it, is that all
That makes sense.
traditional? Okay. Hold
Yeah.
on though. From the time that the first one comes out of the chest to the time you see the big one, are they the same alien? Or is that another alien up in the space rafters of the...
No, because we see it all the way through. So we see the chest burster. We see the little white little hello my baby, hello my honey. We see that that alien. We see that coming out and it runs away, and then we see it kind of molts that white thing, and she even picks it up. Kaylee Spiney picks it up, and is like, "Ooh, gross." And then she looks up, and there's the chrysalis or whatever cocoon,
Right.
and then the guy,
Which looks different than we've ever seen before.
okay, it looks
Don't
very
you think-
female part
Yes.
ish.
Okay. I was trying to think of how we were going to talk about that. But yes,
You know what it
that's
reminded me
new
of
that-
is Naked Lunch. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah. It's
Yep.
ugh.
Wow.
No. Can't. No. Who wrote that?
Oh, it was William S. Burroughs.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No. Can't do it.
He was on a
I
lot
am
of
not
heroin? No. What was he on?
sure.
He was
I
on
mean-
some sort of drug. Yeah. A lot of drugs.
Drug.
Yeah.
There are books that I want to read and that I have read, and I know I'm not ready for them. And I often think, maybe I'm not ready for this. Maybe I need to wait. And there are books that I've read that I've waited, and I'm glad I waited. I don't know if I'll ever get William S. Burroughs to the point where I understand his little poetry, and he's done some YouTube videos, and he was cool as heck in those. And he did some cool things about Thanksgiving that I've never heard spoken the way that he spoke them. But other than that, forget it. It's I don't know. Anyway, it's not. Okay, I also think that we didn't get to see the little one run away. It would have been good if they had let it run away and try to chop its tail or something, so we could identify that by its tail being missing or something. Because when you see all the other aliens, you're like,
That's
was
true.
that alien?
Yeah.
Is it coming out of there? And I think they designed the pod that it's going to get birthed from so they could take the electric probe and do what they did with it. I think the whole electric probe came from that idea because, I mean, men.
Yeah, it's men.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
I mean, it wasn't even an illusion. It was just a direct reference. Yeah.
I mean, hands down, and disgusting, but in a creepy kind of horror flick kind of way.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. So let's jump to the Offspring design. Here's what I don't understand about it. First of all, it looks completely computer generated. It does not look like a real person. When I saw that in the credits, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That's a real person?
Well,
And
a portion of it is.
All of it is. That's his body.
That's not his body. No way.
Yeah, I think
all I can see is like his head ish.
No, I think it's the real body. I think it's
he's
his
a
real body.
Romanian guy. His name is
based basketball player.
Bobrovsky.
And then maybe I got fooled by the internet, but I'm pretty sure that's him. That's him.
Yeah, Bobrovsky.
Okay, why cast anybody?
For like to get facial capture and to get like, I mean, there's a reason to have a person there so that people can interact with them. I mean,
so what did
he's
they
7'7".
It's him. That's him.
But he's not going to be that skinny and that like.
I'm telling you, look at pictures of him.
Okay.
Unless the internet has fooled me into believing it, he looks just like that.
Dang.
Okay. Which is no judgment on him. It's not a body image thing that I'm questioning. My question is, if they had somebody who was real in that, which they did in the original costumes, and I think they do in some of these, right? Or original. I guess it's a costume.
It is a costume. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a costume. And then they try to put a dog in one at one point for the Fincher film.
Oh, for Alien 3, yeah.
I think they pulled it, though. I don't think they ended up using it because they couldn't get the face to work. But so it looks computer generated. It doesn't look real. That's my first thing. Second of all, they try to make it look like the architect, or what do they call
the
guys
engineer?
The engineer. That's what I couldn't think of earlier. I was looking that up and I couldn't figure it out. Engineer. They try to make it look like the engineer, which I guess makes sense because it injects that stuff in there.
The black
and that
goo.
all brings but the black goo only exists in Prometheus and Covenant. It doesn't exist in the first four Alien film, which is fine.
Sure.
This is the middle of it. So it's a little weird that they all of a sudden took that and interjected it. But they needed to do that to make the pregnant lady have a human xenomorph. Right. Okay. Just like in Alien Resurrection, which you don't remember, but do you remember the human-like xenomorph in that?
Maybe.
That had a little nose and little...
I do remember. Yes, I do remember that. Yep.
Right, it had that weird kind of...
whine.
Meow type sound that it made. It was not designed well enough to keep me engaged. It pulled me out. And so if you're going to halfway make it the alien, the xenomorph, and halfway make it the engineer and halfway make it human, then why extend its body so much? Or why give it a tail? It just took me out. I thought, why not make this a little smaller baby-esque alien human engineer? Because then you would feel sympathy towards it, which you're supposed to feel towards the one in Alien Resurrection. You're supposed to feel sorry for it because she's got to take it out with her, Sigourney Weaver, or whatever version of Ripley that is by that point, because she's been
cloned,
mutated, cloned throughout that whole entire thing. So why was it so... It's almost like they made every obvious choice they could make, and the last 10 minutes flicked this movie into a different place than it was up to that point for me. And maybe that's just something I have to accept.
Well, yeah.
But
maybe
ruined that movie for me. Okay, not ruined it, but just there were so many smart choices throughout this whole entire film, and it had me, and I was like, this is really gonna be great. And then pregnant lady, EpiPen, pod, oh, birth, human, oh, engineer.
So you were on board up until you saw the thing.
I was on board until the shot comes back and you see the whole body and everything.
Okay.
And I was like, and then you see the little tail wiggling at
You're
one
like, that's
point.
not
And I was
right.
like,
What about the tongue that had the little mouth on the tongue?
that made sense to me.
Me too.
That made sense to me.
I think for me,
I just think his face. They had okay. I'm trying to not diss on this movie in the last 10 minutes of our podcast, also because I did thoroughly enjoy this film, and I can't wait to see it again. I probably won't see it in the theaters again, but I will once it's streaming. I will search it out as I have the other films multiple times. Okay, so they wanted to make sure you could connect the engineer to this creature. So they went literal with the head, then not with the body, and not with the tail and the bone structure and all that other stuff. So why not somewhere in between? Why not an extended just a little bit when it turned to the side that had the dome or the banana seat head that I think of when I think of the xenophobes?
Xenomorphs.
Yeah, I was wondering if I was going to do that. Xenomorphs. So anyway,
Well, so for me, it didn't actually take me out of it because it did look very CGI. But for me, at that point, I was like, this is another kill. Like,
right.
It's another kill in the horror movie, and it's the final boss. And so now we've got the final boss and the final girl, or the serial killer and the final girl, and now we're gonna, we're gonna bring this thing home. And even that last jump scare when she's hanging out.
The best.
Yeah. And I was like, and it all looks so fake. It looks very, very fake. All of it looks fake. Her kind of like floating back up in to the cargo bay of the ship. It looks fake. Like, she doesn't move that well. Her face is obviously plastered into that little helmet there. Like, it all looks fake. But at that point, you got the music swelling, you got the epic scene in the background. Like, I'm wanting to bring this thing home. So I was on board, and even the second time I watched it, I was on board. So it didn't really bug me that much because we were already like on the home stretch, I think. And that was more of like, and I know we've talked about this in the past, like it's like I will forgive a lot if the vibe is right, if the music selection is good, or if the if we're moving in the right direction. Like if I'm engaged, if it's dynamic, like I'm gonna like. I may not like be analyzing the mouth movements of the alien or whatever, like I may just like be like, all right, we're landing this plane, let's do it, and I'm going to be okay with that. And I think it's probably, I mean, there were certain things that I was confused with, like his whole like groin area was this like little like, I don't know, cloaca thing or something. I don't know. It was very
cloaca.
weird.
What is that?
That's the thing that chickens have and birds have, that like they do everything out of it. They like pee out of it, they poop out of it, they impregnate each other into it. So it's like a one-stop shop. So
and what's it called again?
Cloaca.
Ugh. I don't even like that. What?
I didn't make it
terrible. I'm not saying you did. I'm just not wanting to know it because that's
well,
that's
a
weird word. And I think I sent you a text with the picture of that.
The full body
player.
of the guy. Okay.
I think so.
So he's a basketball player. Okay. All right.
Yeah, which makes sense. So my point to
dude, no way.
See, I told you.
No.
See, I told you. Doesn't it make you think differently though on some level?
Kind of.
Because didn't you think a lot of that was
stuff? His elbows and stuff, like they modified his body. They did. It's not the arms aren't like, it doesn't work that way. He had like little things popping out of his elbows. Like,
oh yeah, of course, and they made his stomach turn to the side, which I didn't understand that choice either. Yeah. And I hear what you're saying. Let's land this plane. Let's get this movie over with. Let's get away from her, you bitch. Let's get it all in. Because
I don't. Yeah, that's not excusable. You can.
And I don't understand the line reading either.
The waiting for the you bitch part, like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't get it. like, I mean, I get it, but it strikes me as, let's make a completely different choice on purpose, but let's use the same words. And
it doesn't make sense. Like, how do we even know the gender of that alien? When Ripley says that, it's the queen.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
We've already established the gender of the alien.
They should have given him a little bit of a sassy line reading on it, you know, just something different, because as soon as you know the moment's coming, I just wish that, here's why it doesn't bother me that they used it per se. It's just that the opportunities for a screenwriter to come up with something new and original that would remind you, just like new and original xenomorph human, something, and they went with the choice that they knew everybody would understand, instead of the choice that, and maybe like it can't be thought of, maybe there isn't a better choice, obviously, because that's, you know, there are certain lines in movie history you just know when you hear them where they come from, just because they're like infamous at this point. We're going to need a bigger boat, things like that.
Yeah, but what if somebody in Jurassic World, what if Chris Pratt in Jurassic World said, life finds a way? Like, what if he said that? It wouldn't make sense.
I just think there's so many smart things in this film. Yeah. There's so many interesting ways they integrated and paid homage to things, and like tapped into things and designed things, but yet tweaked it just enough. It's a younger crew. It's an ethnically diverse crew. Yeah. She's a woman, but she's younger. I mean, there's just little tweaks that go, okay, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. It's, if they found a way for Chris Pratt, and I'm not even thinking, I don't even want to justify it, because I think it's completely wrong that he would say that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it would be how they found that way to do it that would make it work for me. Mm-hmm. It twisting the line somehow, and I'm going through my head trying to figure out how to twist it to make it work. You know, something along the lines of finding a way life does, something Yoda.
Yeah, you'd have to completely restructure it.
Yeah, and they could have in this film.
That's
because
true.
They've restructured so many little things up to this point, especially visually and production wise, that, and even tone and suspense. You're right. The first one is suspense. This one's horror, and this one is suspenseful horror. So they tweak it just enough to make it their own. So when they don't, with these two issues that we're talking about, and 3, if you're counting Ian Holm's performance, or the android's performance, Rook's performance, which I also don't think that's that clever. They named him that, but they stick out even more, because we've gotten a film up to this point that the fact that they land the plane is not as important as how they land the plane for me. And they did land the plane, and they did it well. And the last couple shots that we already talked about really save it and pull me right back in. And I wonder what's going to happen to her. And I wonder what's going to happen. What's the next phase? What's going to happen? Where are they going with this next? But if they had ended it 5 minutes earlier, instead of the it's done thing, then I might have been a little bit more disappointed with this movie, because I almost walked out of it going, the last 10 minutes rocked it for me. I won't say ruined it, but it rocked it enough for me to go, I had little to nothing to talk about this, because I thoroughly enjoyed this film. And then boom, and it triggered all the things that I were thinking. So, I mean, obviously we got an hour-long conversation out of it.
Yeah,
so
it was good.
You know,
well, and I think that just when you saying that at the very end here, it kind of made me solidify my view that this movie, it stands on its own. Sure. And it alludes to previous instances and utterances of the Alien franchise, but it doesn't need that to stand alone as a movie. I mean, obviously it needs the alien facehugger to alien thing to be this movie, but they're able to have, like you said, new characters, and they're able to make the story dynamic enough, and they're able to make it exciting as a horror movie and a horror first, action second movie. And I don't think that they really defiled the meaning of the Alien franchise by doing this. So I think that it's definitely, high mid-tier Alien movie. So yeah.
One of the first things I wrote down, and one of the first things that we talked about, it's a worthy installation. Installation, is that the word? Installation in this franchise. It's worthy of that. As a matter of fact, there's 2 or 3 other ones that this one puts to shame.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's worth seeing. It's a great Friday night popcorn movie where you're going to come out of it alive versus anything else. You're coming out of it alive, and you're glad you went, and it was an experience, and the roller coaster was scary and all the stuff that it was, and you're not thinking too much about it. You're not analyzing your meaning of life because of it. You're not going home and being romantic because of it. All that stuff that some...
Yeah, and we didn't even really get into like the whole Weyland-Yutani. Every movie has expanded on the horror that is the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. I mean, to this point, it is indentured servitude. Like, the first movie was, hey, we're space truckers. You want us to haul this stuff from here to there? Great, you pay us, we're moving on. This movie is literally like, you had a contract with us, now we are reneging on the contract. And
the moment that you fulfilled it,
and we're doubling it. So screw you, get back to work. Like, that's a whole nother part of corporate greed, corporate, just like I said, indentured servitude, all of that, slavery, essentially. It's that kind of a thing. And that's the impetus for this whole thing to kick off. They're definitely not shying away from that. And that's been a basis ever since Aliens, ever since the second movie. But, it's a whole nother discussion, I guess. But
well, in a way, it also pays homage to Fincher's film in the fact that that's a prison, and they can't go anywhere, and they're trapped in this world irregardless, and now they have to deal with a dog alien and 4-legged one. So that's kind of what this is, except for they are escaping from that. And I love how they established that in the beginning, how awful the colony is and how there is no sun. I do, and I'll end my thoughts. I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was wishing she went into hyper sleep, but she doesn't. Oh yeah, she does.
She does at the end.
I wish when she was starting to fall asleep, she would have seen the sun rising.
Oh yeah,
cheesy.
Well, they alluded to it at the beginning. That's one of the first shots.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's what would bookend it for me.
Oh that's true.
That she's. I mean, because we know in our hearts that she's not safe. No. I mean, just talk to Noomi Rapace, right? Who knew that she's not going to show back up as much as she suffered in Prometheus? I thought for sure, that was one of my issues with Covenant, that she wasn't at least in it enough for me to understand what happened to her. And I thought it was a little disrespectful. They kind of did it to Newt and the cat and some other things in the other films. But this one, it would have been nice to know, oh, this is our happy ending. But is it?
Well, of course it's not going to be a happy ending, because once they get there, she's not going to be able to bring Andy in, or if she does, it's going to be like under, cloak of darkness, and they're going to constantly be running from anybody who is going to find him out as an android. So
some wiring or something was permanent. Once she takes that out, it's still there. So he had already trapped one of the vials. He's got one of the vials.
Oh, I didn't see that.
No, I'm not saying
that
I
see
happened.
what you're
I'm saying,
okay, you're saying like
they
that's
could easily,
the next.
She's going to this savior planet, this paradise where she's not an indentured servant slave, and she can see the sun. Next thing you know.
Wow. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can find us on X at Actor Engineer, and we're on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll see you next time.